Hey guys, in this video we are going to go through chapter 6, exercise 10, which looks like this. So to start, I'm going to draw this overall shape over here, and then we learned in our last video that we can create rounded corners using the fillet command. So the overall dimensions of this is 8 by 17 I got. So let's go to Inventor, and we're going to create a new English part drawn on the XY plane. And I'm going to draw a rectangle. We can't use a slot. Remember we did the slot in the last video? The slot command is only good if it's a perfect half circle, a semicircle. So we're going to go back to the rectangle at 2 point, starting here, and we're going to tell it 17 tab 8. And you can do the curves on either the sketch, the fillets on either the sketch or on the 3D part. I'm going to do it on both. So we'll do fillet, tell it what the radius is. Radius over here is 1. I know that because if I look over here, that's like a quarter of a circle. And if this was drawn out, it would be a diameter of 2 or a radius of 1. So I'm going to tell it 1, line 1, line 2, line 1, line 2. Line 1, line 2, line 1, line 2. Finish the sketch and extrude it out a height of 2. Now, similar to our last video, I don't really want that as my home view. I want, sometimes it's kind of hard to find, probably something like this-ish as my home view. So once you kind of get in the ballpark, you can then use this to figure it out. Because me personally, if you try and figure it out from here, it's like not easy to find the right one. I find it easier to just hit shift and middle scroll wheel to move it around. And then once it's kind of close, hit it. Once you're somewhat in the vicinity and you choose your right corner, now you can right click the little home right here, set current view as home, fit to view. I told you I was going to tell you another way to do that. So I'm going to delete, or I'm going to edit my sketch. And if I deleted basically everything, probably would have been easier to start over, right? And just created the rectangle, 17 by 8, and finish the sketch, I could have done fillet over here. I could have hit fillet, and now notice that I'm doing the fillet from when it's a 3D part, not a 2D sketch. The fillet radius is 1, and now you're just specifying the edges. Does it matter which way? Not at all. Whichever works better for you. Now I'm going to create a new sketch drawn around top of the other one. I'm going to orientate it so it looks a little bit more how I would want to see it. Yeah, that looks good. And I'm going to draw 3 circles, and I'm going to obnoxiously draw them nowhere close to where they ought to be. And these circles, let's go back, each have a diameter of 4. Yeah, each have a diameter of 4, and then there's a hole in the middle. But I can't do the hole right now because the furthest I could have it extrude down to would be the distance of the cylinder, and I want to go further than that. So I'm going to do the cylinder first, and then the hole after. So 4, and I'm going to create 3 of them. I'm just going to draw them random locations. But I can do all these in the same sketch because they're starting and ending with the same extrusion. And I'm going to locate this using the dimensions. So I'm going to hit dimension, the center of it, to the origin, and I can now tell it the vertical or the horizontal distance. Vertical distance, I want 4. Do that again. Horizontal distance, I want it at 3.5. 1, 2, 3, and that's about a half. This one I want to be a vertical height of 4. There's other ways you can do this. Later lessons, we're going to get into these constraints in more depth, although Solid Professor probably touched on them. And then I'm going to tell it from here to here. No, you ought to be 5. Same with this one. From here to here, you ought to be 5. And then the overall vertical height difference between them could be 0. Just showing you a different way of doing it. I can tell that the difference between here and here should be a vertical height of 0. Another way of doing the same thing. I can finish the sketch now and extrude. No preview happens. You have to just manually click 1, 2, 3. There are many options. Inventor doesn't know which one you want. You have to tell it. And the overall extrusion height will be 4. Or I could actually do 6 in the other direction and make it a join. But I want 4 in that direction. Now I'm going to add the hole. So in the last video, I described how the hole is a little bit different in your version and my version, and we're going to use what's called a concentric hole. A concentric hole, or really concentric, means 2 or more circles that share the same center. The example I provided was like a target. All the circles in the target have the same center, different diameters. So when I do a concentric hole, I'm going to tell it, okay, I want it located here, and I want the hole to have the same center as what? So you can just click on the circle, and it locates it. Specify the diameter, which is 2, and the distance is through all. And now I'm not going to hit OK, because if I hit OK, it closes it out. I'm actually going to hit Apply, which saves the hole and then lets me create a new hole. Apply, and it comes back up. So now, click, click. What happened? Click, click. And it'll save your last diameter, so you don't have to keep redoing that. Hit Apply, click, click, done. And just like that, we finished our part. File, save as, chapter 6, exercise 10. Save it. And now we need to create our, you guessed it, drawing file. So new, drawing. Now we have to, you guessed it, change our sheet size to size A, and then, yep, you guessed it, aren't I annoying? Delete the title block and add the smaller title block. Create your base view, and I'm going to match the one from the workbook. So I have my flat side on top and my candle looking shape on the bottom, because like this view right here does a better job of showing you the overall geometry than the top one. That's why we choose this as our front view. If that's not the default, just move this around until it gives you the one you want. Move it to where it should be. And you can create your projected view right from the same one. Make sure your hidden line is on and your shaded is off. You can always move these around after, of course. Hit escape and then move them around. So go to annotate and add some center marks. Note that you can't just do the small one, you have to do the larger one. The fact that they're touching is not preferred, but it's okay because it's a standards issue with like the scaling, and it's not something we're going to worry about right now. Going to add some center lines. And now our last video, we talked about how when you have a hole, you create the center lines using the center line bisector. And when you have a cylinder, you create them using the center line. Typically, there are exceptions to that. In this case, center line bisector is probably easier. So I'm going to click this. 1, 2, boom. 1, 2, boom. 1, 2, boom. Hit escape. I am done with my center marks and center lines. And all I have left to do is dimension. So I'm going to hit dimension, do this height over here. Point A, point B gives you the overall height. And now remember, we have both cylinders and holes. Whenever we are creating a hole, we dimension to the circle. Whenever we are creating a cylinder, we dimension to the rectangle. So I'm just going to do one instance of it. But because I have 3 of the same thing, I'm going to hit escape, double click, and I'm going to tell this TYP. You can also do 3 places, 3PL, really any way works. I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to locate this right there, just so you know that all of these are 4 inches from the edge. The overall height or depth, whichever way you look at it, is 8. And now I'm just going to specify that the distance from here to here is 3.5 because we need to locate all these circles. Now that preview, I think it's kind of close. It looks okay over there. You don't always have to do the preview, whichever looks better. But make sure these are lined up. It looks a lot cleaner when they're lined up than when they're all over the place. Now, I don't need the last one. If I did this last one as well, that would actually be redundant because you guys know you always have to have the overall. And if I have the overall and all 4 of these, it's unnecessary. Because if I didn't have this, you would still be able to tell me this is 3.5 by just doing the math. I'm going to move that down a little bit to clean it up. And are we done? No, I think we have one more. Actually, 2 more. I now need to specify the diameter of these holes right here. So I'm going to click over here and just try to avoid crossing any dimension lines. You can cross extension lines, of course. Yeah, I think that looks good. And I'm going to, same thing. If I double click it, I'm going to now type in TYP. And the last thing I need to do is I need to specify this radius over here. So you got to find a good place for it. You might be violating a rule. If I put it over here, I'm violating the rule that all dimensions must be in between the views. If I put it over here, it's still kind of the same rule. You got to just pick one that's going to make it look better. I'll put it over here, and then same thing. Tell this TYP for typical. Is that everything? I think that's everything. Let me zoom out, give you a good view of everything. Do a file, save as. You can name it the same thing as your part because it's a different extension. It won't interfere. And we are done with this part. Now, all 3 of these parts will be due next class, which will be at the time of this video. This class is scheduled to be taught on 2/17, so this will be due in class February 24th, all 3 parts, as well as what was assigned on February 10th. All right.